All right, let's get started. I'm going to start with just a little bit of a review. So I have brackets open with an empty file here, demo3.html, and I will insert the HTML template. There we go. And I will set up my screen. So I have brackets on one side with my code, and then I will do the live preview with the preview browser window on the other side. So of course this looks as expected because I have nothing in the body of my page. Therefore, the HTML output is empty. Let's do a quick review of some of the tags. So first the title tag. This is demo3. Get in the habit of putting a title for all of your HTML files. Again, this is the title that appears in the browser toolbar, in search engine results, and in the browser favorites. Very important to have it. And then let's move over into the body where I'll start creating some content. Let's do an H1 tag, the biggest heading, and I will type demo3. Looks like my live preview wasn't updating. Sometimes that happens, kind of glitchy. So what I did was I actually just saved the file. So I went File, Save. You didn't see it because I used the keyboard shortcut, Command S or Control S on a PC. But if that ever happens to you, just note that you should try saving the file. Just File, Save, and then it should update. So we have the H1 tags for headings. We have the smaller H2 tags for smaller headings, of course, and so on. We had the paragraph tag to create paragraphs of text. And then we looked at some inline tags. So right now these are block tags because they reserve the full width of the page and they stack vertically. So that is why we have three stacking elements here on the left because these are all block elements. But inline elements occur in the line and they take up only as much space as necessary. So let me add the bold tag here around the word paragraphs. And that is an example of an inline element. So right here, I'm just going to zoom in to make it bigger. We've now created an inline element by surrounding the paragraphs word with the bold tag. So this word paragraphs is now in bold. And finally, we looked at some different style of tags, the empty tags. We use them to create a line break or a horizontal line. So I'm going to use the HR tag and close it with the slash. There's no end tag. This is an example of an empty tag. There is no end tag. It is just the start tag with the slash inside of it. And that's what's used to insert a horizontal line. These are empty tags. They have no content. They just are what they are. You create the tag and it inserts itself into the page. It has a special syntax. You won't get a mistake if you do it like this, but this is kind of confusing because it looks like a start tag and then you're looking around and you're like, where's the end tag? But there actually is no end tag. So it's just better practice to put the slash in the start tag, and this is the correct syntax to do so. That is what I want you to do with your code. And then we have a line break. So a line break is to put in a single line break as opposed to a paragraph which puts more than one. So let me use the BR tag over here with the correct syntax after the word of. So have a look at the output right there. So we are cutting the line and we're creating a line break, exactly like pressing the enter button on your keyboard. So that's the basics of what we did up till now. There are more tags, of course, but this is just a quick review of the concepts that we've been looking at. I'm going to continue with chapter 3 of the textbook. We have a few different things to start learning here, a few more pieces of the puzzle that will help us advance our knowledge of working with HTML. We're going to learn some more advanced tags to create lists and tables. For example, this is a table right here, and this is a list right here. So these are just examples in my textbook of what a table actually is and what a list actually is. And we are going to learn the code to do that. But also there's some other little specifics that we need to learn first. I want to teach you about reserved characters. So think about it. We have two characters in HTML that are reserved, and we're going to see why. Reserved meaning we're not really allowed to use them. And one of them is this one right here, the less than symbol. So what would you want to use this for? Well, I don't know, you could think of the mathematical symbol of less than. So if you do 5 is less than 10, for example, can you think of why this character would not be allowed like this in our content? Well, it's because this is the opening tag, the opening character for a tag. All our HTML tags begin with this character, right? So if we were to start typing this character, Code Assist pops up and it thinks that we want to create a tag. And the browser, the web browser, behaves the same way. When it sees this symbol, it thinks, okay, what's coming next is a tag. So if you think like a computer, if you think like a programmer and how the computer reads our code, it has to have very specific rules to follow. One of the rules is when you see this symbol, when it sees this symbol, it's going to interpret whatever follows it as a tag. So it'll keep reading until it sees the closing tag. So this symbol will confuse it because when the browser sees this tag, it's expecting a tag name to follow it. But since we don't want a tag, we want to use it in our actual content, we need to have a special way of specifying this one character. And the way we do it is through character codes. So it's right here for this symbol. The less than symbol uses this character code. It looks like a whole bunch of weird stuff, but it's actually broken into a character code with a special syntax. It's kind of like our sandwich. We've seen our HTML sandwich of tags. This is another kind of sandwich. It just looks like it has some weird buns. So this one over here is the opening character code, and this is the closing. And what comes in between it is the label. So we have the ampersand LT, which stands for less than, right? This symbol is the less than symbol. So the character code for this one is LT for less than, and it closes with a semicolon. Okay, semicolon. So if I wanted to use this less than symbol in my content, I actually need to type this code. So instead of typing this less than symbol, I'm going to type the ampersand LT and then the semicolon. You see, Code Assist is helping me out, right? I put the ampersand and then the list of all the special character codes pop up. So if I just press the ampersand, you can see all of them over here. So there's a lot. The character codes are a way of inserting special symbols into our code. I'll talk more about this soon, why we have special character codes for all of these things, but really the only two that we need to remember are these two right here. These two are the reserved ones that absolutely must be replaced or escaped. We say escaped when we talk about replacing special characters. So we're escaping it with these character codes here. So the less than symbol has the LT character code, and then the ampersand is also a reserved character. So can you think why? Well, we use the ampersand to specify a character code is coming. So just like the less than symbol was used to say a tag is coming, the ampersand is used to say a character code is coming. So we also need to reserve this character, and it cannot be used in our content straight up. It needs to be escaped. We need to use the character code anytime we want to use this in our content. So for example, I don't know, Thelma and Louise, right? We can't simply type this out because it's going to create a syntax error. The web browser thinks the ampersand is a special character code. So we need to replace it with its special character code, and that's the AMP for ampersand. So as the opening ampersand to specify a character code, then we put AMP for ampersand, and we finish it off with the semicolon. So I'll agree with you, this gets to be a little nitpicky. and a little nuisance for us, but I did save it for week 4 because it is a little thing that we do need to worry about, uh, just in case we ever want to use these characters in our content. So in the exercise, I'll have you find these characters in the content, and I'll have you replace them with their special character codes. Fortunately, these are the only 2 special characters we need to worry about. There are others for inserting things like copyright, registered trademark, or even bullets. Like you might have saw this pop up with my code assist. However, we don't really need to put them. It's good to practice, here's the character code, ampersand, copy for copyright, and then the semicolon, and then we have REG for registered trademark. Again, the syntax is the same. So the character code syntax is up here, it never changes. It's always an ampersand, the code, and then the semicolon. And you see that repeated here with all the other character codes. But fortunately, we don't need to actually do these. We can simply copy and paste these symbols into our code. And that's because of this tag that we have up here called the meta tag. So what is this meta tag? I've put it into the HTML template. I told you don't worry about it, just put it. And that's still what I'm telling you now. Don't worry about it. Just make sure this tag is inside your HTML template. And then you don't need to worry about HTML character codes like this. Okay, so this is just a little bit more information for you, some extra practice. What's really important that you take away from this is simply these 2 characters. The less than and the ampersand are really the only ones that we need to use the character codes for. Okay, another piece of the puzzle, HTML comments. HTML comments are something that web programmers do to put little notes for themselves into their code. We can use it to help organize our code, or if we're working in a team, it could help explain parts of the code to another team member. So for example, if I wanted to say this is part 1, and I wanted to put that little note in our code, unfortunately that's going to create some HTML content. So we have what's called HTML comments, which could remove this from the output of the page. Let's have a look at the textbook, and you can see it right over here. The syntax is very weird. Okay, don't worry, I never ask you to memorize things like this on a test. I usually help you out by giving you what's called a cheat sheet, and you can use it to just um, look at the tags and then apply the tags. So I'm not going to ask you to memorize these things. Even with the special characters, I will give you the special character codes on the cheat sheet, and you'll be able to use it on your test. The important thing, what you need to do, is just be able to recognize what it is. So here's what the comment syntax is. It has these exclamation mark and the slash, and it ends with the, dashes, and it ends with the dashes here at the end. So it looks like a tag because it has the angle brackets, but then it's kind of sneaky and it has these exclamation mark and dashes to talk about the comments, and anything in between these dashes will be ignored by the browser. So let's have a look. If I wanted to put part 1 into comments, I would surround it with the comments tag with the open angle bracket, exclamation, slash slash, and you can see everything after it started getting grayed out. That's because we started a comment, so it's turned everything after it into a comment. We need to close the comment tag, so I'll put the dash dash and a greater than symbol. Now we can see that the gray is restricted only here to the text inside the dashes, and anything else after it is okay. So let me save this file, and then you see in the output over here that the part 1 text is gone. So this is very useful for us to organize our HTML code by inserting little notes for ourselves that will be ignored by the web browser. Again, you will practice using this in the exercises. So here's just a little bit of an introduction to it. So those are two little puzzle pieces that I wanted to give to you now. I think we've done enough HTML that you're ready for them. There are a couple little specific things. The syntax is a little bit different, but we're going to practice using them and then you'll remember them. All right, let's learn some new tags. These are a little bit more advanced. They're what I'm calling nested tags. Nested tags are HTML tags that contain other HTML tags inside them, inception style, okay? If you think about it, it's not really something new. We've already been using lots of nested tags, and you can see that here with this kind of family hierarchy that I've put in a diagram. It's the HTML sandwich that's being shown in a different way. We have the HTML tag, which is the uh, first tag in the sandwich, and then we have other tags that follow inside it. So if we look at the code to our HTML template, we have the HTML sandwich over here with the contents inside. So we already have nested tags. It just means tags that have been put inside other tags. So the head tag over here has two tags inside it. So we're nesting these two tags inside the head. And in the body, well, whatever content we decide to put in our body ends up being nested inside the body. So this is a very useful diagram to look at because we see the parent-child relationships between our tags. It's very useful for you to think of these HTML tags using a familiar analogy like we have with families, parent and children, or parent, child, and grandchild. That's pretty much as deep as we're going to go in our code. And we're going to start using some tags that make use of this parent-child or even grandchild relationship, specifically the list tag to create lists and the table tags to create a table with rows and columns. We can see over here in the diagram an example of a list tag, which is over here, the OL. So it's defining a list as the parent, and then it has a number of children that are the list items inside the list. And you can see it with the table tag example over here, where we have a table parent, and there are 3 table rows inside the table, and each row has a certain number of columns. Don't worry, this looks like, we didn't actually see the tags yet. I'm going to explain to you these tags in more detail. First, just start thinking about these parent-child relationships because it's going to help you understand the code that's coming. Okay, so let's look at lists. Here we have example for 2 types of lists. We have ordered lists and we have unordered lists. What we're looking at here is just my textbook. It's just a text document, and I'm using bulleted lists. A bulleted list is an example of an unordered list. There's no order to it because the symbols here, the bullets, don't indicate any kind of order. An ordered list, however, has some kind of numbering or order to it. So an example of an ordered list, I could change it over here very easily in Google Docs. I just changed the bullets to numbers. And that's an example of an ordered list. So when creating a list, you first need to decide what type of list am I creating? Is it going to be an ordered list with numbers or an unordered list with bullets? Each one has their own tag. So the ordered list is the OL tag over here. The unordered list is the UL tag over here. So OL, ordered list, UL, unordered list. So it's the first letter of the word that we could use to remember the tag name. So that's the parent. When creating a list, you first need to define the parent as either an ordered list or an unordered list. Then you need to put the items inside the list, and that's where the nesting comes. We have a tag here called the list item tag. It's LI, or list item. It is the list item tag, and it is used every time you want to insert an item in the list. So this example here shows you 3 list items. Item number 1, item number 2, and item number 3. So whatever text you put in between the li tags will become the list item. You can see the output of that over here, item 1, item 2, item 3. And the ordered list is actually putting the numbers for you. Notice I did not put 1 period here, 2 period, or 3 period, because the HTML code is going to do that for you. I'm going to remove that. I'm going to show you after it. It's the browser that's going to put these numbers and why it's actually pretty useful for us. But before we move on, just remember, you also need to close the parent ordered list tag here. So don't forget, you're creating the parent tag of the ordered list. You are putting 3 nested tags inside it, and then you are closing the list itself. That's why we're calling it a nested tag, because it is a tag that has other tags nested in between it. And it's pretty much the exact same thing for the unordered list. The only difference is the parent tag. You use the OL tag for the ordered list, and you use the UL tag for the unordered list. So let's go ahead and do this with code. Just going to add some space here below. Remember, white space is ignored, so all this white space I'm inserting has no effect on the output of the page. It's simply giving me more room to work inside the body of the page. So let's start by creating an ordered list. I'm going to do OL to define the ordered list. Brackets is automatically putting the closing tag. And this is a situation where it's actually pretty useful. What I recommend you do is press the enter button. Why? Because if you do it like this, it's going to create a beautiful structure for your code where it's very clear and obvious what the parent and child relationships are. Then you could come back here and press enter. I also suggest you put each list item on its own line. So we've now set up good structure for an ordered list, the start tag and the end tag. It's ready to go, and we won't forget to put the closing tag later. Now we can start putting the list items. So I'm going to go back to that new line I created and type the li tag. And again, brackets is being very useful by typing the end tag for us automatically. And I'll put bananas. How about that? And we can see this in the output of our page over here, where it has inserted the list item with the number 1. The number 1 because it's an ordered list. Let's just quickly put another item. I'm going to put a new line and type the list item tag. And let's put oranges. I guess I'm hungry and I want a little snack, so I'm thinking of food. But here you go. 2 items in our list, and they are being numbered automatically. So this is actually the first thing you're seeing that's kind of like a programming language. It's pretty cool that it's adding some content for you. You don't actually need to tell it, 1, 2 in your list, because doing so will be redundant. You're putting it, and the web browser will also put it, and that's why we see here that it's being doubled. So that's not good. Let's remove that. And what's really cool about this, and why I said it's like a programming language, is have a look. If I just take this line of code and cut it, and let's say put it after the oranges, and save my work, it's going to get updated. So this is a cool example of how code can help us create content. Let's do another example of the unordered list. So I'm going to start with the UL tag and press enter to put the closing tag on a new line. I'll come back up here and create a new line for each list item. Using the li tag for each list item, there we go. So if you do this slowly and carefully, you'll see that it's pretty straightforward. So to review, you need a parent tag to define what kind of list that you're creating. You insert the list items nested inside the parent, and don't forget to close the parent tag with a matching list tag. So definitely have a look at those, and of course there will be an exercise to help you practice. Now's a good time to start talking about indenting code. Keeping your code organized. The way I type my code here kept it beautiful. It's really, really helpful to have your code nested like this, indented in such a way that you're able to see the parent-child relationships. It's very easy for me to come here to the opening parent tag and then just bring my eye down to find the matching closing tag. And then we can see here the list items are nested inside this parent because it's indented to the right. So this is my recommendation for you, is to indent your code in such a way that all block elements indent one time for each child. So this is the parent, it's at this level over here. Its child is indented one to the right. And that way we can very easily see the structure of our parent-child relationships. Sometimes you don't always get this perfect layout at the beginning, and that's why I have this section in my textbook talking about how to indent your code. Indenting your code is using the Tab button on the keyboard, the one on the left side of the keyboard next to the letter Q. And by pressing the Tab button, you have to be careful though. I'm going to show you the different ways you can do it. By pressing the Tab button, you can indent your code. So the way to do it is put your cursor where you want to indent and press the Tab button to indent to the right. Let me turn on my keystrokes for you. Okay. So here, every time I press the Tab button on my keyboard, it's going to move one to the right. But now I'm going to hold the Shift button and press Tab, and it's going to indent to the left. Okay. You can also press the Delete button, but I'll show you why I'm not even showing you that way. Because it's very easy in brackets to work with multiple lines of code. And I recommend that you actually highlight your text and press Tab or Shift Tab to go right and left. Reason being, you could actually work with multiple lines at a time. So here I've highlighted 2 lines of text. I could press Tab to move them both to the right, or Shift Tab to move them both to the left. Let me show you again. I'm going to highlight all of these lines in the unordered list. I'm going to press Shift Tab and keep going until they're all stuck on the left edge. So parent-child relationships. Let's try to do this the way that is perfect indentation. What's the parent of this stuff? It's the body. So the body is here stuck to the left. I would recommend indenting all the content in the body, one to the right. Awesome. Did you see I didn't even have to select all the text? As long as you're highlighting any part of the line, then it will indent fine. So I have the body over here. Indented 1 is all the children inside the body. And because the unordered list is a nested tag, I'm going to highlight these 3 lines and press the Tab button. And we can now see the parent-child relationships very easily of the unordered list. Okay, so I recommend you pause the video and experiment with indenting your code, right, left, and make sure you are able to control the placement of your text. Okay, so hopefully you got the hang of indenting. It's going to be useful to help organize your code as we are about to learn the table tag. And the table tag, like I mentioned earlier, has three levels to it. It has the parent, child, and grandchild level. So I hope you're ready for this. So we have an example table here shown on the right in the textbook. Here is the code, and here is the output. Actually, the output is these three lines over here. That's the example of a table. And the way we make a table is just like the list. First, you need to define the table. Okay, so we start with the table tag, and you see it is matched with the closing table tag all the way here at the bottom, and all this stuff is nested in between the opening and closing table tags. Now let's break this down. What we're seeing here is actually three rows of content. Here's the table row number one, here's the second table row, and here's the third table row. And you can see over here how we have 1, 2, 3 table rows. Inside each row, we have three columns. So here's the three columns of the first table row, and you can see them over here. Here's the three columns inside the second table row, and the three columns inside the third table row. So it's pretty normal to have the same number of columns inside the rows. Otherwise, you'd be missing a little rectangle over here, right? So it's very common to have the same number of columns inside every row. But this is the process for creating the table. So we have first, the table tag is defined. Then you create your rows. And inside the rows, you need to put the columns. So there are a bunch of tags involved. We have the table tag. We have the tr tag for table rows. And then you have two types of tags to create columns. We're going to have a look at them right now. So let's go over here and create a table. We'll recreate the one here in the textbook, first, last, and age. So first name, last name, and age. So we start by creating the table tag. And brackets will go ahead and put the closing tag for you, which is great. Like the list, I'm going to recommend you create a new line. By creating a new line, you're putting the closing tag at the same level of indentation, and you don't need to worry about doing that later. I just saved my work and noticed nothing is appearing yet. That's normal, because we didn't actually put any content inside of the table yet. So let's go ahead and do that. First, we need to create our table rows. So I'm going to type the tr tag. And because this is also a nested tag, I will recommend you press enter to put it to a new line. Just like the list. And then over here, we're going to create another new line. And just like the list item was on its own line, we're going to create the table data cells on their own lines. So this is where we're finally getting to create the columns. I'm going to type the td tag and do first for first name. We see it started to appear in the output. And on a new line, I'll put another td tag. I'll put last. And then on the third new line, I will put age. There we go. So what we're seeing is the three columns. It's a little hard to see in the output of our page because there are no borders to these columns. So this is something I'm going to add just to help us see it, but you don't need to worry about this, okay? So just ignore what I'm about to do, but I'm going to add a border to the table. There we go. Now with the border, you can clearly see that we've created one row with three columns. So let's continue. let's start putting another row, tr, and I will put the closing tag on a new line. Then I will come back and create my TD tags for the table data. So let's create the first entry in this table. First name, I'll put me, Jonathan. The second column, there we go. The second column, I will put my last name. See, every time I add the TD tag, it's going to be added into the table. And if I were to leave this one out, we'll have a bit of a hole, right? So like I said earlier, normally we have the same number of table data tags in every row. For the third one, my age, I'm going to put question mark. How old is he? You will never know. Here we go. So I've just created the second row of the table, which is the first entry. So this is a perfect time to talk about why we had two tags. Remember we had the TD tag and the TH tag. So the TH tag is exactly like the TD tag. It's exactly the same thing. The only difference is it gets displayed differently by the web browser. TH stands for table heading. So here are the headings, first, last, and age. So usually a table has headings to it, and that's why I'm going to put these with the TH tag, and you'll see how the web browser displays it differently. So I'm just going to erase the TD and put TH and save the work. And you see what happened? It created a font that is centered in the table cell, and it is bolded. So that's the difference between the TH and the TD tag. TH are meant for the table headings, and they are displayed a little bit differently. They are centered and they are bold. So I'm going to replace last, and I will replace the one for the age. There we go. And there you have it. What you can do, if you're kind of lazy like me, if you want to create more table rows, what I like to do is highlight this text, and then I copy it, and then I go to where I want to paste it, edit, paste. And then you change these values for the second entry. How about Fred something, and we'll make him 2 million years old. How about that? So there's nothing wrong with being lazy when you're a programmer. What this does is actually help us to work faster, and also, if this was shown to have no mistakes, if we coded this properly, when we copy and paste, we're more likely to recreate good code because we avoid any spelling mistakes when we retype things. So copying and pasting is a very, very good common thing to do when you're coding. So that's it for tables. Try to create a simple one on your own. If it helps you to see the table, you could add this border attribute thing. It will help you to see the lines of the rows and the columns, but don't mix up this structure at all. You need to have the table as the parent, then the table rows as the children, and then the table data as the grandchildren. This is the required structure, and now that it's indented beautifully, it's very easy to see the structure and avoid mistakes. I could come here to the table tag and see that the closing table tag is matched below it. I could come here to the TR tag and move my eye down and see that it's matched with the closing TR below it, just like all the others. If you're unsure, a neat trick in brackets is to click on a tag and you see it highlights in green the opening tag and the matched closing tag if it exists. And if your indentation is off, just use those tricks I showed you with the tab button, highlighting the lines and pressing the tab button to move them around. One last thing about tables. Sometimes we have rows or columns that span more than one cell. So let's add something to this table here, which is the title of the table. So I'm going to add a row here at the top. So just above the first row, I'm going to create another row with the tr tag. And inside it, I will put a th tag to create a table heading tag. And I'll give this table a name called people. There we go. So what happens over here? We now have people as the table heading in the first row, and we now have 3 rows that we created earlier. They follow it below. But the issue with this is we have these 2 empty cells. So usually it's quite common to have a title that spans the entire table. This is the only situation where you could have mismatched number of children. All these rows have 3 children, but the first row with the title only has 1, and that's what we want. So to fix that, we have this attribute called colspan or rowspan. So you can see that over here in the textbook, colspan, which stands for column span, and rowspan, which is, row span. So it's telling the browser how many cells this data cell should span. So can you think about it and think about how many columns our title should span? Column number 1, column number 2, and column number 3. First, last, H. So we want this table heading to call span, okay, 3. And you ready for it? 1, 2, 3, save. There we go. You see how this heading is now spanning the 3 columns. We can also do that with the age. I'm not going to show an example of that. I'll let you play with that on your own. But I just want to show you something new that we learned here. What we just created was called an attribute. So this is pretty interesting. It's a new syntax that we're learning to create an attribute inside our tags. So let's review our tag syntax over here. Let me just remove that. This is what we had up until now. Opening tag with the closing tag. But what we just did was we went inside the opening tag over here, and then we added an attribute inside to specify more details. This is the generic syntax in my textbook, so it's not a real example. It's just a color-coded example to help you see the syntax. There's a space after the tag name. We put the name of the attribute, we put an equal sign, and we put the value in quotation marks. All these things are kind of important. And let's have a look at it over here with a real example of code. We have the th tag, we put a space, we put the attribute name with this call, which is callspan, we put the equal sign, and we put the value in quotation marks, which in our case was 3. So it's very important that all this takes place inside the start tag. So the start tag of the th is over here. So we go inside the start tag over here, and we push space, and then we create the call span. Call span, use code assist actually, because code assist will help you with putting the equal sign and putting the quotation marks. And then you just need to type in the value that you want. So let's try with 2. How about that? Save. Oh, you see? People is now spanning 2 columns over here. But the correct value for this table would be 3. So there you have it. That's attributes. It's a little bit more advanced, but I think you can handle it. Okay? So we're adding an attribute inside the TD and the TH tags. That's the only attribute I want you to be aware of for now. It's the call span if you're trying to have a cell span more than 1 column, or the row span if you're trying to have a cell span more than 1 row. Okay, there is more attributes that you could learn, but I put a big warning here. This is only if you want extra work. If you want some extra material, you could have a look past here in the textbook. You'll see lots of different attributes that you could use. You saw that I used one for the border of the table. I'm not asking you to use it or memorize it, but for those who are interested, you could find all those other attributes over here. I don't teach them because this is actually deprecated. This is the old way of doing it using HTML. But in future lessons, we're going to learn how to use all these attributes with CSS. Okay, so this stuff is not covered. I can help you out if you have any questions, but this is not required for my class to learn these advanced attributes because we will do this some other time using CSS. Okay, so I think that's it for the lecture today. Quick recap. Do I have a quick recap? Yes, just a little bit more for the syntax, just to remember what we did. We did some special characters for the reserved characters. We learned about comments, and we now have a little addition to our knowledge about tags, which is adding attributes inside the tag. Okay, so try that out. Try to get that going before the lab time. That way we can start quickly with questions. But of course, you will have exercises to help you practice this during the lab. So I'll see you soon.